The 80s had the General. The 90s had John Gilligan. In the noughties, it was the reign of Martin Marlowe Hyland. His was a familiar path with success and power, and then the recklessness. He had to go, because with him, an innocent young man doing an honest day's work died. Crime World presents Caught in the Crossfire, the unsolved murders of Coke Kingpin Marlowe Hyland and innocent Anthony Campbell. Available now on all podcast platforms. I think people like sort of seeing the faces behind these scam compo claims because, it's been a big story for a long time, hasn't it? People claiming money off insurance companies, which is, of course, is the excuse of the insurance company then when insurance is so high. And there's always been this narrative that we're all paying for the ones who put in the claims.
It was even said in court this week by the judge when he was sentencing Winnie Lawrence that there's a big factor, he said, in the enormous payouts that people are paying for insurance. But yeah, so Winnie Lawrence, who's 74 and a mother of 14, she
16.
was... Is it 16?
God love her.
God love her. So she was one of the few people, I'd say, to end up behind bars in relation to false claims. She was given a 3.5-year sentence this week, 18 months of that suspended, which is quite a long time for somebody of her age.
For sure.
She received tens and thousands in compensation after making false personal injury claims. And she basically, between around a decade ago, she made a number of false claims using a fake name, and she has been convicted of it. Of course, you famously confronted her, didn't you? Do you remember the famous headline it was under? Cabbage Patch Skid, was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. I did. It was probably the end of my doorstepping days.
It is one that you don't...
I'm not too proud of it.
It's not one when you go on your various media podcasting performances and speak about your career, tracking down the Penguin and Daniel Kinnahan.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
You don't throw in Winnie Lawrence's name.
Don't throw Winnie Lawrence.
The same.
Because she was 69 at that stage. So
she was in the prime of her youth.
And there's a few of the sort of older people that you do try and talk to outside courts and everything.
Yeah.
And, age is on their side in a way because you're sort of skimming up behind them. Sort of, sorry, excuse me, sorry, chance to get you. And you just want to hold their shopping for them at the same time. But anyway, I spoke to Winnie Lawrence. So we're talking about June 2019 at this stage. Now, we had been, and I was working on a story tipped off to this sort of series of scams and fraudulent insurance claims that were going on at the time. And the Gardaí were working on information they had got from insurance companies, and they had sort of discovered that there was a group of people who were working loosely together.
Yeah.
Or certainly knew one another, and they had ramped up claims to the tune of well over 1 million.
Yeah.
And Winnie Lawrence was one of those people. So homes had been raided, and her house had been raided in Clondalkin, I think it was.
Yeah.
And from that raid, the Criminal Assets Bureau, I think the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the local units had gone in. It was quite a heavy-handed approach.
Yeah.
But they had seized papers and they had seized checkbooks and they had seized all this sort of stuff. I suppose trying to work out the identity of people. They had seized information on their bank accounts, etc. But as they were beginning the investigation, Winnie came before Circuit Court Judge Pauline Codd. And she was basically, she claimed that she'd slipped on a cabbage leaf in an Iceland store.
Yeah.
And she sued then under this bogus name. Looking back on this story, the one question I failed to ask was, I thought Iceland only sold frozen stuff. How is there a cabbage leaf on the floor at all?
Well, exactly. I mean, that could be the heart of the claim.
That was a big question, wasn't it, that I failed to ask. Anyway, she said to the judge at that stage that she only made this claim so she would stop worrying about who was going to pay for her funeral when she died. And, outside I tried to speak to her about the wider investigation and all, but she wasn't that particularly friendly with me. She said, just no comment, I don't want to talk about it. But it was interesting that she was kind of popping up before the district court time and again, while this bigger investigation was going on in the background.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that she has been sentenced is because she had a previous conviction for a similar offence that was set in court in which she received a suspended sentence. The details of the court in this week, it was relation to 6 particular claims between September 2012 and May 2014. And there was only 3 of the claims were ultimately successful. And you're talking about relatively small amounts of money. There was the first of the 3 claims was just over 28,000, of which she received 23,000 in total. Then there was a second claim from I think it was Tesco's for 12,000 and another one from a bookstore for about 10,000. So what you're really seeing is a lot of...
Quite a lot.
They are quite a lot, but they're not enough maybe that it's worthwhile for the insurance companies to defend them. So you see,
or
obviously,
for the Gardaí to investigate them.
Exactly.
That's the bigger problem, isn't it?
Well, it's for both problems because insurance companies are in this position where they settle claims that aren't going to cost them a fortune, because even if they go and win them in court, they might not get their expenses. So it becomes this kind of way where if you sort of pitch it at the right level, you might make the money. And the court heard that she made these claims under the name Margaret Mongan. Sorry, I said Morgan. And obviously, she pled guilty ultimately to 3 counts of making a gain for herself or causing a loss to another by deception on those particular dates. And the judge said it was a significant amount of money involved, on which Lawrence was the main beneficiary. She actually said, "I'm very sorry." That was one of the rare things Winnie Lawrence said in court this week. And it'll never happen again. However, the judge still gave her a prison sentence,
Now, you see, when this investigation begun, and there are some things going before the courts or still before the courts, so we can't discuss it in full, but the suspicion was that there was almost this sort of organised ring of fraudsters, scammers that were working sort of loosely together and apart to build up these up to 40 claims so, they had identified in the original investigation.
And there was kind of multiple identities being used, and that would prove to be one of the complicated bits. So, and also then, one of the primary questions you get asked when you make a claim and you go to court is, have you made previous claims? And if the identities don't match up, then that can be an issue. If you say, no, I never have, if you admit to having made previous claims, and a lot of times you hear that when it comes to court, if people don't make that admission, it can lead to big problems for their case. Obviously, there was a solicitor who was also raided at the time when Winnie Lawrence was arrested. He was also arrested and he was also charged. However, what happened to him was the case against him was what's called adjourned generally. And the court heard that that was due to ill health. So when it's adjourned generally, it means it's effectively indefinitely put off. The charges were brought against him in court, but they have been adjourned generally. And that clearly means at the moment he is an innocent man. He is an innocent man. He's not being found guilty of any offence.
But I suppose what we can say from that is that the suspicion was that there was a solicitor working sort of hand in glove with this organised ring that was responsible for up to 40 bogus claims when the original investigation, codenamed Operation Cody, was launched. So the fall on the cabbage leaf in Iceland, like, do you bring that with you if it isn't for sale?
I don't know.
Maybe Iceland sell fresh vegetables, do they?
I don't know. They must do. Or else
frozen cabbage, maybe.
Yeah, it was just a random. Yeah, I mean, look, the other one.
You've been in Iceland?
I have been in Iceland. It's gone now, of course.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you wouldn't be.
I didn't even know that.
They don't sell foie gras or whatever. You normally, they don't have that in your. No, but it was a cabbage leaf in an Iceland supermarket.
But I was going to say to you, that was in 2013 that fall occurred.
Yeah.
So your dates are between 2012 and 2014 when this investigation is concentrated. So those 40 bogus claims that were originally being investigated all happened within a 2-year period.
Yeah.
But in a kind of a wider look at this grouping and Winifred as well, it was believed that this had gone on for a long, long time, and there was, way more than that. They'd sort of taken a window to have a look at. At that time of the cabbage leaf, she had used the name Ellen Stokes.
Right.
And a number of different dates of birth. And her case was with the RSA insurance company at that stage. So this medical appointment had been arranged for the Blackrock Clinic. And a secretary out there became suspicious when Lawrence arrived with no photographic identification. She looked older than the date of birth that was on this Ellen Stokes claim. And when she was asked if she could have her picture taken, she didn't allow it. So basically, the Blackrock Clinic, I think, actually at the time, alerted the Gardaí. So that is, from what my memory was really what sort of started the whole thing, that the insurance companies and the Gardaí started to talk. They realised that this was suspected of going on, and it all came to light because of basically the amount of claims going before the courts.
And obviously what happens with this is an issue that becomes a political issue, the cost of car insurance, or insurance in general, but also car insurance, where the politicians periodically raise their heads above the parapet and start to demand action, and obviously always the insurance companies who've plenty of questions to answer themselves, the insurance companies in Ireland, and there's been plenty of investigations into how they come up with their figures as well. If you remember, there was Europe-wide investigations into alleged insurance companies acting as a cartel. Mm-hmm. So there are questions for them to ask, but they always put it back to the fact that the huge cost of doing business in Ireland due to litigation. So some of that was that's in the background. In the case of Winifred Lawrence, just to go back to her solicitor, his name is Thomas Quigley of Thomas Quigley Solicitors on Ballyfermot Road. He was charged with 10 offences of, around the same dates between 2012 and 2014, 6 for deception and 4 counts under money laundering laws. He was alleged to have induced a person at CIE to compensate Winifred Lawrence for personal injury, which she claimed under a false identity. That was alleged against him. He was also accused of deception for another insurance claim involving Lawrence as well. And there was various other charges laid against him. It was also alleged that he took a receipt of 11,000 from after a deception of AIG Europe, which would be one of the big insurance companies. But as I said, it's adjourned generally, and that means the case is not currently proceeding. However, it could be re-entered at a future date in theory,
But it's the amount of money that goes out on these cases. So what happened with the cabbage leaf one was that, she made the claim, but then she basically never showed up in court.
Yeah.
Right? Because she had been blown in the Blackrock Clinic, having made a speedy exit and refusing to get her photograph taken. But the insurance company, RSA, had, at that point that the case was dismissed because she didn't show up, they had already spent 15,000 in legal fees on that, right?
Exactly.
So when they got to the criminal case where she was before Judge Codd was told that she had no money to pay to compensate the company for that, right? And all she was in receipt of was the state pension at that stage. She'd never worked in her life.
Yeah.
So she was sentenced to 3 years, got it suspended in full. And, it was said in the court at the time, there must be a deterrent for offences of this nature. It undermines the capacity of insurance companies to provide cost-effective insurance for others. So as you're saying, it is this kind of...
Well, I mean, it's interesting actually, because it did come... She was before Judge Codd again this week. And as I said she told the judge she was very sorry and it would never happen again.
Yeah.
And obviously she might remember the case before.
I wonder, does she remember?
Well, she did say when Winnie Lawrence said it would never happen again, she said, Judge Codd replied, I know, Miss Lawrence, but you have to be punished for what you did.
Yeah.
And,
She got half of this one suspended because she got it suspended in full the last.
Exactly. But it's still 2 years for a 74-year-old.
Definitely, yeah.
Now, what you will see, of course, and what you're repeatedly seeing in the prisons, particularly in the women's prisons due to overcrowding, is that a lot of people getting those sort of jail terms for a year or so, or for a couple of years, they're out very, very quickly as well. We had a case last week in the Sunday World of a woman who was involved in defrauding somebody out of money in terms of a pension, and she was given a year term and was out back on the streets within 7 weeks because the prisons are full. The female prisons are full. They have to let people out.
Yeah.
They just let them out because they literally cannot. You cannot just keep piling people into the women's prisons in particular, which are set up.
Because also then what you end up having then is civil cases, civil actions.
Exactly. And they're just literally not set up, I think, to just pile the bodies in.
No.
So what happened in that case was she got a year, she was out after 7 weeks due to overcrowding. And what they prioritise, obviously, the prisoners that pose a risk in terms of violence to themselves or to other people. So a lot of these people really won't. There's no way she'd be behind bars for the 2 years, I would imagine. So she may be free for you to harass her yet again.
I mean, like there I was at the beginning of this feeling embarrassed, but I actually think I was doing a public service, was I, by, fronting up this pensioner and asking her the hard questions. Like,
she made you look tall as well, didn't she?
I can't sell cabbage.
Yeah.
I never knew.
And she
made me look tall, and look how young I look. I'm actually disgusted with that.
Well, you have to put the picture up on YouTube for the people there.
How do you do that?
But somebody else does it, Nicola. That's how.
Poor Winnie Lawrence, and then she's her little arms folded and everything. And anyway, I gave her some distance, but. Yeah, look, it's just a carousel, isn't it?
It is. It's an interesting thing, the compo claims, because there's some stories. Obviously, a lot of my work is doing on SundayWorld.com, and as part of that job, you see these figures straight away, how well a story does. And one of the stories that you know is going to do well
Is an L compo claim.
Is an L compo claim.
I think it just drives everyone mad, doesn't it?
I don't know, but people love it. You know what I mean? And,
But there's all sorts of great ones, though, over the
years. There is.
People who've claimed that they were injured in car accidents and they have been all over Facebook.
Oh, look, it just seems to be, it's you can
disco dancing, doing all these sort of things.
Karate competitions.
Yeah.
But
I was talking to a guy, who was previously a member of the Guards and then went into the sort of the investigation side of these insurance companies, because they are quite heavily populated with retired guards and all, because they actually need proper investigators to go out.
Yeah.
And a little bit like our own job,
Yeah.
Sometimes they found the evidence they needed so easily on Facebook or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't there something recently about somebody was carrying another human being?
Well, there was the famous case, was it, of the Christmas tree throwing case down in County Clare. Yeah. So a woman who had a bad back, I think, as a result of a crash, and then she was pictured winning a Christmas tree throwing competition around the same time. So, yeah, it's. I think it's people there's been a great tradition in Ireland of making an L compo claim, hasn't there, for a little bit of an injury. Like that has been a pastime of the Irish nation, just flashing into the Dublin portal. Maybe
the only thing that could make this podcast even better would be if there was some sort of a collision between compo claims and the portal.
Yeah. So the first
grinding
slipped and hit their head.
I did ask a few of my circle, did they think if the portal had been around the Stephen's Green area, would things have been any better behaved?
Yeah.
And what came back repeatedly was there might have been
what? There might have been what?
I can't say this.
Go on.
A better class of
class of ass. That's classist. That's not good.
I'd probably be cancelled.
Well, I don't know.
I didn't say it. I'm just repeating what I heard from my inner circle. Anyway. Yeah, right. Well, look, Winnie Lawrence off to prison. Maybe I'll be there waiting for her the day she gets released. And
she'd just be 76 years old then.
She'd be 76, yeah.
Thanks, Nicola.
It's not. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.